Welcome back, everybody. Today I'm reviewing Tales of Arise, spoiler free. It's a great game, but it just missed the mark on being a masterpiece. In these first couple of minutes, I'll give you my overall assessment, and then if you've got the time, you can listen to me break things down in more detail, give explanations, and give my opinions on why this just missed the mark on being exceptional. So I rate it an 8 out of 10. I spent 70 hours playing it, and I got 40 out of the 58 achievements. About 10 of those are from the DLC, paid DLC, and after story, which I did not purchase. This game really shines with its combat and other gameplay mechanics. The combat is action-based, and it takes place in these instant arenas. So you'll encounter something on the overworld, be transported here, and you'll have up to 4 party members with you in battle to do combat. And the rest of them are going to be sitting outside, but you can still engage with them. You've got all kinds of abilities that you can use. Some of them are enhanced with various elements, and the core part of the gameplay is chaining them all together and trying to build up these long combos. You've got an action meter that's going to be depleting as you use your abilities. You can call upon one of your allies, whether they're in the battle or outside, to use a special ability, and it replenishes some of your action meter without erasing your combo. And so that's how you can build up bigger and bigger combos. I will say though, the effect of that is not necessarily as important as it was in previous Tales games. But it's a lot of fun. You'll be discovering your own gameplay style, using whatever abilities you like best, and there's a lot of skills that you can choose from these various skill boards, one for every character, and you can detail and customize your characters as you see fit. The story, people say that it's a love story. I would say there's not enough emphasis on that aspect, and the main component of the story is about this oppression. You've got the one race of humans, and they are oppressing the other race of humans on their own home planet. And your main character, Alphen, is basically trying to liberate everybody. So that is the overall assessment, and now I can start to break things down in more detail. Starting with the combat. I feel like I should have been better at this game. I tried to play it on hard, and unfortunately I failed. Especially when it came to a lot of the bosses, I had to turn it down to normal, sometimes on easy if I was a couple of levels behind. There's a few reasons why I think that may have been the case. Number one is the strategy system. So you can access this menu and you can start to develop your own strategies and how you want the AI to cooperate with you. I had one that was basically a one style fits all. I did tailor it a little bit more towards the boss encounters, but I wasn't exactly able to get the nuances between how I wanted my regular battles to go and then how I wanted my boss fights to differ from those. So just for the sake of time and for the sake of trying to move through the game a little more steadily, I focused on one battle style, and I typically just kept on adding these conditions to it. When a character would use a healing spell, how much of their ability points or their CP, it's a different type of ability point, how many of those they should try to conserve, etc. Another reason why I may not have succeeded is because of the skill system. And this is me kind of blaming the game, but hear me out. So in the skill system, as much as I love it, I like unlocking new abilities through it, I like powering up other ways to play the game, I didn't exactly know the benefits of the skills that I was investing in, not beyond the surface level description. It doesn't tell you the stat breakdown, unless I missed it. But I was looking in a lot of different places to try to find percentage increases, flat number increases, you get the idea, and I never found them. So if something said, for example, it's going to level up my fire abilities, how much? Is it worth investing in that skill for this boss fight, or is it worth buying a weapon that has a fire ability enhancement? I don't know the difference, and I'm just kind of going in blind and hoping for the best when I invest my skill points. The third thing that I want to break down about combat is not necessarily something that's wrong with the game or a fault of the game, but it's different, and it is the stagger system that has been redesigned. So now you can't stagger every enemy, you especially can't stagger a lot of the larger enemies, but they have weak points, and these weak points are these glowing orange sections of the monsters, and you are intended to stand in front of them, use your abilities, focus them down, and once that weak point, let's just say ruptures, the enemy comes down and you get some free shots on it. The funny thing about this, and I didn't mind it, I actually enjoyed this as part of the gameplay in 3D, is that a lot of your abilities are going to move your character. So you're trying to position yourself at a certain point in front of the weak point, and using these abilities and your basic attacks even just keep sliding you all over. But I like the movement component. I like that I was constantly repositioning my character, trying to refocus on the weak point, being mindful of the enemy telegraphing its attacks and getting out of the way. But again, probably going back to point one, where I didn't set up the right strategies for my characters, they weren't all maneuvering as well as I was. And so sometimes they were getting stuck. I'd have to use a consumable. But anyways, it's chaotic, it's fun. I think if you play on normal, you're still going to enjoy it. But I can see, especially with the enemies' bloated health bars, why people didn't enjoy that aspect of the combat. Why people didn't enjoy the difficulty, maybe. That said, the game really jazzes things up a little bit and provides this visual feast for your eyes. The combo attacks that you can perform when you get to a certain threshold of the enemy's health, you can call on one of your allies and you can combine one of your attacks with theirs. It gives you this little cutscene that's short. I must have seen over 200 of these while I played the game, but I never felt like they were dragging on too long. And the graphics, I'll get into more detail with them later, but they really were outstanding, especially in combat. I could also talk a little bit more about the enemy variety and some other aspects that were related to the combat, but I'll let those go for now. Of course, I have my opinions on them, but I don't want to set your expectations. So let's just move on to the next category, which is the other gameplay mechanics. Things like the exploration, things like the side quests, and fishing. Of course, fishing is a big deal. And also customization and crafting your weapons and whatnot. When it came to your weapon and your armor advancement, armors were typically found in the wild and through your exploration. At least a lot of the best armors were. The weapon customization, or I should quit calling it customization, typically what you're going to be doing is just going to these craftsmen, these blacksmiths, giving them your latest materials, giving them as much gald as you have, and having them build the best weapons for you. And that's it. It's just a cycle that keeps on repeating. Sure, you can do things like dress up your cosmetics and have different weapons showing. That's all fun. I appreciate all of those little details. But as far as the advancement and the progression is concerned, it was very standard. The exploration was a lot of fun. I definitely appreciate how they improved that from Berseria. I felt like Berseria was, even if they did give you some big maps, it's not like they necessarily encouraged you to explore them in detail. And this one would have you going to all kinds of nooks and crannies, looking for different treasure chests. And the side quests sometimes, they related really well to the exploration too. Go and hunt down certain monsters. That could be for a bounty. Or go and retrieve this material. You might be told that it comes from a certain monster, and some of them had really cool conditions for obtaining that material. For example, early on when I was trying to take on these big golems, I didn't get one drop from them until I actually went for the weak point first. So just killing the golem without addressing its weak point didn't yield that material that I needed. The rest of the side quests were pretty good. I thought early on it was a little unusual that every time you spoke to somebody who had a side quest, the game would take you out of the in-game flow of things and it would take you to this little cutscene. I just thought that was really unnecessary for the latest Tales title in the series. Did they have to do it that way? Questionable decision because, again, it just ruins that flow and keeping things fast. Overall, my assessment of the side quests were they were more fun than most other Tales games. Tales could probably still do better when it comes to side quests, making them engaging, making them more rewarding, but I would say they were pretty good in this game. Something that I forgot to mention with the exploration that makes this game a lot of fun is that the characters have abilities that they can use on the overworld. You can break down barriers, you can smash boulders, you can climb walls, whatever it is. This was a really great addition to the game as well because it gave you more reason for revisiting old areas. Maybe you were looking for materials, maybe you were going to some of the fishing spots, or maybe you remembered that there was an inaccessible area. And so you take a new character to that old area, use their ability, and now you find a treasure chest and whatever it might contain. I love that. The overall presentation of the game, and this kind of builds off what I was just talking about with the flow, and your flow being disrupted when you talk to people. There are a lot of skits. I love the skits in Tales. Everybody loves the skits, right? That's what Tales does, is it gives you the opportunity to learn more about your characters or joke around outside of battle. Now, before I criticize them, the skits look amazing. They're done in this comic strip style, and it'll just have one comic panel appear at a time on your screen, and the characters are moving as they're talking. They're not still images. That was so impressive for me, and it even had the characters' currently equipped attire in the comic strip panels. But what this game did terribly was you would get to a new area, and the first thing you want to do in a new area is start exploring it, right? No, hold on. Let's have a few skits for the characters. How about you give me 5 minutes on my own, and I go to a few parts of this area, and then you can prompt me with the skits. With me, I'm conditioned from the previous Tales games where if you didn't read it in time, it would disappear forever. This game, it does let you read missed skits at a campfire, but I couldn't change my habits. So I'd get to this area, and the first thing I want to do is explore, but instead I'd have to press my button so I could listen to my characters talk. Okay, now this next section is a biggie, and this is the main reason why I wanted to make this review in the first place. So I'm going to talk about the story, the characters, the storytelling, and the pacing. And again, there's going to be no explicit spoilers, so I'm sure there's going to be a lot of stuff that I want to talk about that I'm still going to refrain from discussing in this video, but it is what it is. If you've already played the game and you want to get into anything with me, that's what the comment section is for. So the game begins with this 300-year-old conflict, like I already mentioned earlier, between the Renans and the Dahnans. The Renans come from the planet Rena, and they are a sort of human that has an affinity for magic. They are the superior human. There are 5 Renan lords on Dana, each controlling a different territory. All of them are enslaving their people, and that is all for the purpose of this competition of the lords. Whoever can harvest the most astral energy, which is done basically through the enslavement of the Renans, can become the sovereign, can become the leader of the Renans. That's enough of a story for you to work with for now. Alfin is your charismatic, heroic protagonist. He's a Dahnan, which means he's one of the slave class, and of course he's an amnesiac because it adds some mystery. And why does he wear the mask? Would it hurt if he took it off? It would be very painful. And then Xion is the female main character. She's a little brash, sometimes a little cold, and she's a Renan, meaning she's one of those people with the affinity for magic. And she is Alfin's love interest. From the beginning of the game, these two characters have a reason to work together. Alfin, of course, wants to liberate the slaves. He's sick and tired of seeing people being oppressed. He's sick and tired of people having no dignity in their lives. They live to work, and then they work and they die. And Xion wants to go after the 5 lords. You will find out why that is, but that gives them enough of a reason to team up. Let me talk about this love story just a little bit, because this really should have been one of the central elements in the story. This should have been one of the main reasons why he kept on progressing it. But they don't give you the payoff between the two characters until the very end of the game. And despite them having all these interactions around the campfire or against various enemies, saving each other, whatever it may be, even other characters insinuating that they should be together, the writers really made them take their time with everything. And so you're watching them basically be strangers that like each other for a really long time, and it's only at the very end of the game that you get the payoff with their romance. And you could have had more impactful moments in the story, or even relating to other parts of the game, again, characters being in danger or whatever it is, if they were already established as a couple. But anyways, that's just one of my complaints. That's why I don't view this as a love story. Yes, the characters have a romance, but it isn't fulfilled until the very end of the game, so it's a little disappointing in that regard. What about the other stuff? When it comes to the cast of characters and the different motivations, different arcs that the characters go through, and their own personal development, I feel like there were a lot of missed opportunities. And again, nothing's necessarily that bad, but these are some of the things that prevented the game from being a masterpiece. We'll start with Alfin. So his motivations, to me, they started to feel spread a little bit thin towards the middle of the game. Yes, he's a good-natured person. Yes, he's heroic. And yes, he's always wanting to free the slaves. But there came a point a little bit early on in the story where you meet another character, and this other character has all these responsibilities on his shoulders, and he has the potential to be a unifier between the two different peoples, more so than Alphen, or in a different way than Alphen would be. And I felt like that was a great opportunity to piggyback on that character's story, and for that to become almost the new protagonist of the game. Alphen, just like how he was a bodyguard and protector for Xion, he could have been a knight for this character too, but they didn't go that way. It's okay, it's not the end of the world. The other characters and their arcs, well, everything is a little formulaic. Everybody's got trauma, and everybody's got to face their trauma and overcome it, usually with the help of their friends. Whatever. Aside from getting into each person's story individually, I would say that one of the problems is that the characters didn't necessarily behave differently before and after their conflict resolution. So, yes, you might say that one of them toughened up a little bit because she got to face a major problem in her past and overcome it a little bit. She got to manage her emotions a little bit better. But it's not like she was an emotionally unhinged character when you first met her. So because these characters didn't benefit from their character arcs beyond a simple description, oh, I overcame my trauma, oh, I was able to put this behind me, oh, I was able to manage my emotions better, you don't actually rely on the characters any differently in the latter half of the game. You don't actually have different characters emerging as they should for their leadership qualities, for their newfound qualities and characteristics. So again, I could say a lot more on these topics. I could get into a lot of characters, tell you my grievances with some, and some highlights of others, what was done well and what wasn't. I will leave it at that. Less is more, especially when I'm not being explicit about things. And I can move on to one of my main problems, which is the storytelling. And I will include the pacing in this as well. Most people, when they complain about the end of the game, they say that it's a pacing issue. I don't think that's true for the story, but I definitely agree with them when it comes to the final dungeon, the damage sponge enemies, and how long everything takes. It becomes a pretty grueling final dungeon. When it comes to the story, I think it's better to view it as a storyboard. So all of the events in the game take place on a storyboard like this. And as you're playing the game and as you're acquiring knowledge about the lore and the various inhabitants and the plot points and everything, it fits neatly into about 75% of the storyboard. But then what happens, and what's a really big mistake, is in this last 25% of the game, the lore suddenly expands like tenfold. You have all of this new information, all of these new potential plot points, all of these new stories that can be told, but you're in the last 25% of the game now. So obviously they're not going to do it. So there's all of this great information about the world that would have made for interesting characters and interactions and new quests and all kinds of stuff. But they have to wrap up the story as neatly as possible. And so a lot of these revelations get buried and kind of swept aside and conveniently concluded so that you can have your happy ending. Very disappointing. There was so much more that they could have done if only they included a lot of that information in previous parts of the storyboard. So that's why I'm complaining that's a storytelling issue. The story itself is pretty good. The plot is good. I like the characters overall. The pacing is okay for the most part. But when it comes to how they delivered and disseminated the information, how they built the stories around it, that's where the game really suffers. And again, if any of you have played the game, we can discuss this in more detail in the comments section. These last few categories we'll move through really quickly. I want to talk about the graphics and the visuals. The game looks beautiful. What I really loved was doing the backgrounds in the world in this painted style. I don't know if it's an oil-based paint or a watercolor or whatever. Any of you artists could let me know. You have a better eye for this than I do. But I could at least tell that it was done in a different style, and it looked amazing. Even in the earliest locations of the game, you might walk out to the cliff that overlooks some water. And at first it's going to be a little jarring to you. You're going to go, hey, that doesn't look very detailed, the water down there. But as you take a closer look, you realize that the art style has changed from the foreground in your character to being like a moving painting in the background. So there are all kinds of locations and environments throughout the game where I'd want to climb someplace up high, or I'd want to go out to another cliff or a dock or whatever it was, and I'd just be swinging my camera around and enjoying the art style and enjoying the environments. Also, one more thing about the environments related to the exploration. They did not have to put as much detail into the uniqueness of the environments as they did. But let's say, for example, I'm on a mountain trail and I see a cave to my left. I go into the cave. In most games, 99% of games, it's just a closed off cave with rocky walls. In this game, they might surprise you, and there's an opening at the top of the cave, and there's a sunbeam coming down. It's illuminating things. If you peer over a couple of the rocks, you might even see that there's a running river that goes through the cave. I really enjoyed searching the environments high and low and finding these unique areas that the developers included. There were so many places that had shimmering water that you didn't expect, or these rocks and minerals that might be glowing. They could be luminescent, or they were just reflecting the sunlight. Lots of places. If you're somebody who enjoys the environments in these RPGs, you're going to have a great time exploring the ones in Tales of Arise. Sound and music. Now, I know it was good. I know that I enjoyed the music when I played the game. Unfortunately, it's not all that memorable, and I have no melodies coming to mind right now. I do remember that with the exploration, and when you're going through these savage worlds with all these enemy monsters, there was this epic feeling of adventure that strengthened you, that gave you resolve, and yet it still kept you on your guard for these enemies. And then there were other moments, like in the second half of the game, I think you get a new battle theme. That's really good too. But aside from these loose memories that I have, nothing really comes to mind. So I can't say that the soundtrack is one of the strongest points of this game, but I have read that other people enjoyed it, so it's not bad or weak by any means. We are going to wrap up with how this game compares to other Tales titles. So at this point in time, I've played about 8 of the entries, and this one ranks 3rd overall behind Symphonia and behind Vesperia. The reason why those two are ahead is because of the combat systems. It's not that this one is bad. I already explained the combat system is one of my favorite things about this game. It's really good. I just feel like in those two games, I had more of a technical mastery over it, and I could control the outcomes with more skill. And I was able to beat Symphonia on the hardest difficulty. This game, I never quite got it the same way that it did in those titles, and I feel like some of the clarity and some of the literacy could have been improved with the skills, for example. I talked about that, how you don't know what you're leveling up necessarily. And I probably should have just practiced with some better builds and some better AI compositions. But it is what it is. It's still a fantastic game overall. This is by far the most beautiful world to explore. And that's just one example of one of the things that this game does the best. Again, the presentation has never been better. All of the detail in the comic strip style skits and the other things that I mentioned, sitting down with your party at the campfire, those are all great. I'll wrap up with this. What about the familiarity and the connections that you establish with the characters and with your party? I don't know if it's a symptom of me getting older, but I didn't necessarily enjoy the 2 teenage characters. No, it's not just a symptom of me getting older. They objectively needed some better writing. One especially was always the butt of so many jokes. And it's like, haha, isn't it funny that he's a stupid character? Isn't it funny that he's dumb? And every now and then he'll have this moment where he has some wisdom that he could present to the party. I don't know why they constantly used him as a punching bag. This game really relied on repeating a lot of its tropes, especially for the characters. It is what it is. I don't want to end with something negative, so I will say what it does really well with the characters are in some of those skits, some of the jokes that they have, some of the bonds that are between the characters. For example, the 3 male characters and the 3 female characters. Very funny moments. Some hijinks ensue. I can't show this skit for you, but there's one that comes to mind where they have a cooking competition and all make their own version of a pancake. Really funny stuff. Really enjoyable. But that's it. That's all I want to say about the game for now. I'm sure I've spoken plenty already. Thank you everybody for watching. If you have not played this game yet, let me know what you think. Let me know how you're feeling about playing it. That was weird. If you have this game on your backlog, have I encouraged you now to bump it up a little bit and to get around to playing it? I promise you, you won't have a bad time, especially if you like JRPGs. You'll really enjoy this title. But it's not perfect. Just remember that. And lastly, if you have played this game, again, I would like to have some of those conversations with you in the comments section. What you think about certain story designs or certain gameplay choices or character motivations, whatever it is, let me know. Thanks again, everybody. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.